Hello, scholars. This is Mr. Myers, Lesson 3.10, Problems of the Criminal Justice System. The objectives for this particular lesson are to describe the issues and problems involving the criminal justice system. There are three categories that we're going to be looking at: policing issues, sentencing issues, and correction issues. Like we often do at the end of units, this is kind of a catch-all lesson. It's more about things to think about. We've discussed some of these problems in class and in the books that you're reading, but this is largely just being able to articulate for the test what some of these larger issues are. So here we go. So our first category of problems deal with policing, and we've identified four things to kind of think about. One is, should police be required to wear body cameras? This has been a major hot button issue in the wake of Ferguson and protests in Baltimore and around the country in the last 2 years especially. Another one is, should police have civilian oversight boards to hear complaints? So this would be a group of individuals who specifically are designed to deal with police complaints, the assumption being that the police won't be able to handle those effectively if they're investigating themselves. Should officer-involved shootings be investigated by special prosecutors rather than the regular circuit attorneys? Again, that's largely a fairness issue. And then this last one is, what is the impact of a lack of faith in the fairness of the justice system? Many people in America are very cynical about the criminal justice system, very much like they're cynical about the American political system. The next major issue deals with sentencing. A couple things to think about here. How should sentencing disparities be addressed? So when one person commits a crime in one jurisdiction, they might get different sentences than someone else. Should offenders be required to serve a certain percent of time before being eligible for parole, or should they be eligible for parole, a third of the way into their sentence, if they have good behavior, or is there some kind of minimum standard for parole? Should we use three strikes laws for sentencing? The idea there is, after the third offense, that you get a much tougher sentence, if not life in prison. And should nonviolent drug offenders be sentenced to prison for possession? On the right, you see one of the biggest issues historically and disparity regarding sentencing issues is crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. Some of these issues in the last section here on corrections were addressed by our guest speaker. Should prisons use solitary confinement for routine behavioral infractions? Is that something that is a good idea? What can be done to improve rehabilitation of prisoners? Is the goal to punish, or is it to rehabilitate? And if it's to rehabilitate, how can we be doing a better job about that? Should the government contract with private companies to run prisons? Is it ethical to have a profit motive involved in the criminal justice system? And should we ban the box asking offenders about their conviction status before applying for jobs? Because that is such a limiting factor for people who get out of prison to get a job. Is this something that we need to address? And there you have it, folks. Some very simple questions with some very complex potential solutions. So make sure that you have your head wrapped around those basic questions, and we'll see you in class tomorrow.